Stephen Bassett is an exopolitical activist, a leading advocate for ending the 67-year government imposed embargo regarding an extraterrestrial presence. Hey, you know what? I'm not going to begin until you stop. Thank you. Ending the 67-year government-imposed truth embargo regarding an extraterrestrial presence engaging the human race. He is the executive director of Paradigm Research Group, PRG, which recently produced a citizens' hearing on disclosure at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. And I'm guessing almost everyone in this room is aware of that extraordinary event that Stephen made happen last May in Washington, D.C. Myself, Stan, a number of other people in the work had the honor of testifying before this retired congressional committee. And it was a game changer to a great degree. We've never had an event quite like this. Stephen has spoken to audiences around the world about the implications of formal disclosure of the extraterrestrial presence and has given over 1,200 radio and television interviews. PRG's advocacy work has been extensively covered by national and international media and is soon to begin a new European tour, I might add. PRG will soon begin a congressional hearing initiative seeking the first hearing on Capitol Hill regarding the ET issue since 1968. There are an awful lot of good people in this work who are working very hard to make these aims come true. I don't know anyone more dedicated than this guy, and it is a privilege and a pleasure to bring up my friend and close colleague, Mr. Stephen Bassett.
I want to see the slides. Come up closer. I just came in from Washington, not Sierra Leone. I'm fine. We're not carrying any diseases. Hiding there in the background. This is Paradigm Research Group. That email address is how you get in touch with me. And if you want to be on the update list for PRG, just email subscribe to, actually that's the URL, prg@paradigmresearchgroup.org. All right. Let us begin. It's interesting to note that the last three conferences that I spoke at, this one and the previous two, were about contact. Contact in the Desert was held in August, and you can see it was a pretty substantial conference. 1,800 people came to the desert, 100-degree heat, a lot of dust, air conditioning inadequate, and the power went out on Saturday. Nobody complained. No problems. That gives you a sense of where things are going. Then next year they're going to double the space in one room to 700. They're going to add a giant tent over the open, what they call amphitheater. A tent that can be, where the top can be removed. So at night you can see the stars. During the day it gives you some shade. They're going to add more air conditioning. And they can possibly handle 2,500 people. Then I just got back from Toronto, where we had a contact retreat. Lori Rosenfield and her family are trying to build a support network in Canada for ET contactees. And they have a lot of other ideas. Danny Sheehan was there. It was very intimate. There was about 50 people, beautiful setting. And of course, there were a lot of contactees. And of course, this week, it's you. Right? This is a contact-specific conference. This is the trend. You're going to see more of this, without question. And I will speak about that a little bit later. Then going forward, just for your information, there is a one-day event in New York next Saturday, September 13th, all day, at the Presbyterian Church on West 96th Street, Spiritual Summer for Social Change. It's a free event. There's going to be a lot of people talking about the esoteric aspects of all of this, but there will be a panel on encounters that afternoon. You can easily find this on the web by simply Googling Spiritual Summit for Social Change. Now, feel free to join us for a day in New York next Saturday. And then, to be nice to my good friend Paola Harris, she is launching a new conference in Laughlin, filling a space that was left by the long-running conference that moved to Arizona. This will be November 14th through 16th. I will be speaking there as well. And of course, Laughlin's a fun place, so you may want to join us there. Now, the next thing I want to do is pay tribute. Since the last time you all met for your event, we've lost a number of people. But these four I want to comment on. Lloyd Pye passed away last December. In fact, he died on my birthday. We're 1 month apart in age. He was in great health. He was one of the most dedicated researchers in the field. He'd written several books. He's one of the most interesting guys I ever met. And he had dedicated his life to the scientific resolution of a skull that was found in Mexico, a famous star child skull. He put a huge amount of money into it. I don't know how much, over $1 million. It is one of the most difficult roads to take, scientific analysis in this area, because scientific analysis, mainstream science, folks, and breaking new ground takes years and lots of money and peer-reviewed papers. He went down that road, made some headway, and of course there's still work to be done. He died of an extremely rare massive B-cell carcinoma tumor of the abdomen at 4 months. Dr. Roger Lear passed of a heart attack a couple months ago. Of course, he was the leading researcher in implants in the world, removing more than anybody else. He had more to do. He was on borrowed time, God knows. But he worked right up to the very last day of his life. I was thrilled that he was able to attend the congressional hearing on disclosure, the citizen hearing rather, on disclosure, before he passed. He was thrilled to have been there. And that record, of course, will last for all time. And then we lost also, really tough, Dr. Jesse Marcel. He would have lived a lot longer, but in his 70s, he received a call to duty to go to Iraq because he was a medical doctor and, of course, National Guard, and they need lots of doctors over there. And he went over and flew helicopter missions, and he had to wear heavy equipment. And some of this equipment hurt his back. And when he came back, he had lost a considerable use of his legs, which of course reduced his mobility, which of course reduced his health. And he died of a heart attack. He and his daughter and son testified to the citizen hearing on disclosure. That he was able to get there and do that was extremely wonderful thing. And I was told by the family that it was the culmination of his efforts to bring this forth. He was able to testify finally before former members of Congress. He didn't quite make it to the actual Congress. And then just a short while ago, a shock, Terry Hansen spoke at the first 2X conferences. Terry was a family man, a journalist who wrote a book called Missing Times, News, Media, Complicity, and the UFO Cover-Up, which was the first real book that devoted specifically to the media aspect of the truth embargo. Had a wife, had kids, had the wisdom to move to an island just off the coast of British Columbia, where he had an idyllic life, and worked on a boat, and he didn't make any major contributions after that book, didn't have to, but he died in his sleep of a heart attack. There have been a couple of other losses this year. We're going to lose a lot more. This truth embargo is now in its 67th year. Governments do this. They wait you out, right? They do their thing. They commit their crimes. They make their mistakes. And then they just wait their critics out until they're all gone. And then their heirs, who are now controlling things, move on blissfully into the future, free and clear of responsibility. But not this time. Now, This presentation is about contact and disclosure. I know this is a contact conference, but there's no way I'm getting out of here without slipping disclosure in on the side. So if you thought you were going to get away, we're not having to hear about that. You were wrong. I'm going to soon give a gift to the contactees, all right? But before I tell you about that gift, I'm going to get a little personal. I don't normally do this, rarely get into more personal stuff. I do on occasion, and I think this is an occasion for that. So I'm going to tell you a little story. I entered college. We'll start at the beginning. I entered college in September of 1964, which is a very, very long time ago. I was a very immature, socially awkward kid with emotional issues, like 17 going on 13. I arrived there 1 month, almost to the day, after the United States Congress passed the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. It was passed on August the 10th. It was submitted on August the 5th, so they pretty much slam dunked that puppy. And the Tonkin Resolution was based on 2 incidents that happened in the Gulf of Tonkin, off of North Vietnam, on August the 2nd and August the 4th. And then they submitted the resolution on the 5th. So it was a rather fast track situation. Turns out the event on the 4th never really happened, and the event on the 2nd was mischaracterized. Nevertheless, August the 10th began in earnest the Vietnam War. And that war, pretty much, which started 1 month behind me there, followed me all the way down history for the next 12 years. 2 years later, just a little over 2 years later, in October of 1966, the wheels were falling off for me. My immaturity, social awkwardness, and emotional issues had pretty much taken their toll, and I'd gone from being a top student to being on the way out the door, right? Which I managed to do without any partying, any philandering, anything like that. I managed to flunk out basically just by collapsing inward like a dark star. And within 3 months I would be gone, cast out into the sea of non-college students, where the government, and this would have been in January of 1967, when the United States government was sucking up non-college students by the tens of thousands and shipping them to Southeast Asia. But in that month of October, I read an article in Look magazine about Betty and Barney Hill. Now, the interesting thing about that is that I really had not paid much attention to anything, quote, UFO related. I think things might have come across my radar as I was growing up. You know how it is when you're a kid. You're looking at everything, you're not paying much attention. I really was not on the issue. But this article caught my attention. Now, it's also notable that by October of 1996, I had become somewhat disillusioned. I grew up a military kid, Navy officer father, base to base to base, played on the base baseball teams, and it was all good, and read my father's books about World War II, and America was the shining light in the world, and it defeated the Axis powers, and our values were preeminent. By October of 1966, I wasn't seeing it that way. In fact, just about everything I sort of thought was solid had turned to liquid. And I was very unhappy, as were millions and millions of other people by then. So I didn't much believe the government anymore. And that's only gotten worse. But I believed Betty and Barney Hill. I read this article, and just based on what I thought was common sense, and I was kind of smart, and I had a left brain, and I was studying calculus and all that kind of stuff, and I just sort of read it based upon a simple assessment there was only one explanation. They were telling the truth. It was extraterrestrial. I read a couple more articles after that, also in October, and then I proceeded to get on with my life, which at the time was flunking out of college. I was shortly after that drafted. Thus begins a very long and sordid tale, which I'm going to spare you tonight. Maybe another time, right? Obviously, I did not end up going to Vietnam. But that episode stuck with me for years and years. So I got cast off into, I guess you could say, that purgatory between completely collapsing into uselessness and becoming a star in the mainstream reality. I just sort of lived in a purgatory there where you exist, not causing too much trouble for anybody else other than yourself. And I stayed there for 25 years, until 1995, matter of fact. And it was in 1995 that I made the decision that I had a choice between just sticking around and paying rent or doing something meaningful. And for various reasons, I glommed on to the UFO quote issue. And the reason I did was because back during those years, as that war chased me down from 1964 to 1974, I got pretty angry, got pretty irritated, did some marching, wrote some articles, that kind of activist stuff. I didn't really follow up on it, right? I didn't join SDS or the Weathermen, though I almost went to the University of Michigan when it was being founded. That would have been interesting. That's one of the problems I had. I picked the wrong college. I based my college selection on how well they were in football. It's a big mistake. They were 9-0 the year I was there. But in those years, I did taste the activist nectar and moved on. In 1995, I decided that that's who I was. I need to go back to those days and do it for something that had meaning now. And it turned out that this was the issue. Now, what's also interesting about that decision is that the door that I choose to go through, and there were many possibilities. I could have joined MUFON, or GUFOS, or just read a lot of books, who knows? But one of the reasons that I made the decision to commit my life to this issue was because of Dr. John Mack. There were a lot of books out there, but Mack's was special. Mack was, of course, who he was. He was a Pulitzer Prize-winning Harvard-trained psychiatrist, the founder of the Coalition for Social Change, and an accomplished human being at the highest level, working out of Cambridge Hospital, and he had made the commitment to go into the contact research around 1992. Primarily on the insistence of Bud Hopkins, who deserves, of course, every bit as much credit as Mack, though Mack may get more because he had the credentials. And so he writes Abduction, Human Encounter with Aliens, and I read this book and I go, wait a minute, this is a game changer. If he has written this book, and they've held a conference at MIT, actually, MIT didn't sponsor it, but they called it the MIT Symposium. That's what I would have done. It's an activist maneuver. MIT is probably still wondering how that happened. This is the biggest issue in history, and I can jump in. But which door? And I had, of course, by the age of 49, I had achieved a certain level of wisdom, amazingly enough. Given enough time, one achieved some wisdom. I was able to make the decision to call up Mack's organization, PEER, Program for Extraordinary Experience Research, and by phone alone from California, convince the managing director to let me come and volunteer for them as a development person. How I did this, I don't know. I was in some sort of altered state, right? Which, it can happen to you when you have a life-changing moment. And I just persuaded her, and she took a chance, and so I sold everything off, which only took a couple of minutes, and I drove across country, and I made sure to go through Roswell. I drove through Roswell just to make sure it was still there. Talked to a couple of people, said, is that real? Is that really real? Yeah, it's real. Okay, fine. Kept on going, and arrived in Cambridge on January 26th of 1996. Now, at that moment, my commitment was sorely tested. In other words, are you really serious about this, Steve? Because I had left San Luis Obispo, which is one of the top 5 cities in the entire world in terms to live. Okay, it doesn't get nicer than that, folks. And I arrived in Boston just after the worst storm in the history of Boston in the 20th century. They were still piling the snow up. It was over the buses, right? People weren't going to work, they were climbing mountains, is what they were doing. They had pitons, to get to the office. Right? And I'm going, I don't care. So I spent 4 months at Pier, which of course is where John was studying and trying to develop scientific protocols for dealing with contactees. That was my entrance. But I wasn't really an academic. I'm a bit of a renegade, iconoclast, not big on board of directors. It wasn't a fit. And they understood that, and so did I. And so after 4 months, I said, what am I going to do next? And well, the answer was right there in front of me. Just downloaded. I hate to say that word downloaded because all my Chandler friends say, see, I told you, you're getting channeled, you're getting guided, they're up there telling you what to do. I don't know, I was in the office and went, boom, that's it. Go to Washington, go after the politics, nobody's doing it, it's a wide open field, you can actually score a touchdown here, right? That's the only way it's gonna happen, right? Because I'm not a big guy and I could get tackled very easily and I never let that happen. I always run away. I don't like to run into large people. But I had an open field. I said, I'll go to Washington, be the first lobbyist to ever register on that subject. The press will see that and go, hello. I'll get articles in the paper and suddenly I'm in play and it's just gonna go right from there. And again, I achieved some wisdom by the age of 49. And I was right. It's so fantastic. Because most of my life I was wrong. I come up with a great decision, wrong. This went on for decades. And then, suddenly in an age where maturity has arrived, I'm making decisions and they're the right decisions. Oh, it's so wonderful. So, I went to Washington and registered as a lobbyist, and the Washington Post came out in a week and a half and put me in a front cover business section of the article. Whole damn page, I think it was. And I was the UFO lobbyist. So my interest into the field was through contact. And in a sense, it all goes back to 1966, and an article about Betty and Barney Hill. Now, I'm going to add to that a little bit, because I spent many years in Washington. I'm going back here in November. And so I can say with some confidence that I'm pretty much extremely educated to lying. I've heard a lot of it. And then, of course, once you got cable news and everything, you could have it all 24 hours a day. So I know it when I see it. And then the institutional lying got going. Of course, that was already underway, but it became more manifest, and that's even cooler. That's when whole institutions lie at you institutionally, as opposed to, say, your spouse lying to you. No, I did go to the store, but they were out of, vitamin D milk. Liar. So, essentially, I know it when I see it. Oh, I also talk to a lot of journalists too, and they're pretty good liars as well, because they can never tell you what they really think, because they want to be objective. So I really can't tell you what I believe because I'm objective, right? And that also includes, I know there are ETs here because I've been dealing with them since I was 3, but I'm not going to tell you that. What I am going to do is listen to you and then go write a stupid article about the subject. Because if I actually wrote the truth, my editor would get it. So yeah, they lie too. Why is that important? Here's why. In the last 18 years, I've talked to scores of contactees. Not as a researcher, not as a therapist, just talk to them. Right? They come up to me, meetings, whatever, Plus I've talked to some regular people. We'll be at a party somewhere and somebody will say, what do you do? I'll tell them what they do, and they say, oh, I had this experience when I was 7. And I say, oh, tell me about it. In about 4 minutes, and they go, she's a contactee. And then I say, have you thought about this? She says, well, so have you thought about being regressed? And so off we go. She tells me a story, he tells me a story. But in general, just within the field, scores of contactees. And these people are telling the truth. With almost maybe 2 exceptions, and I'm not going to say who, it's obvious they're telling the truth. Right? They're about as truthful as it gets. And so I have these 2 parallel realities I've been living. On the one hand, I talk with people that have had contact with extraterrestrials that are absolutely believable. And I listen to their stories. And then on the other hand, I'm talking to journalists and politicians that couldn't tell the truth if you put a gun to their head. So I've got some cognitive dissonance going on here, you know? Because you see, the group that lies all the time says that the people that are having this experience are lying. So we have to sort this out. You see, that's the job of the activist, is to relieve the world of cognizant dissonance. So we can one day have a cognizant, dissonant-free world. That is all that I want. I don't want anything more than that. And then I will retire to a blissful life somewhere where nobody can find me. So that's my little personal vignette. And so, in honor of all of the people that have told the truth about this, even to their detriment, and to those that still hold those truths while crouched in a closet somewhere, waiting to come out someday, when they can come out in their own good time, I'm going to give them a present, probably within the next 2 months. I think I may have to wait until after the election, after the congressional hearing starts, because I don't want to complicate the ramp up, as it were. To demonstrate this present, we must go back in history. So I have a little history lesson for you. Come here, there it is. That is the Drake equation. Frank Drake came up with this equation in 1958, coinciding with the formation of NASA, which also coincided with the formation of SETI and the passing of the National Space Act, 1958, very cool year. Frank's a nice guy, still alive. This equation, which has a set of variables, which when you add the appropriate, speculative numbers, some of which are based upon some scientific understanding, you come up with an answer, n, which is essentially an estimate of the number of civilizations that might exist in the galaxy, our galaxy, that could send us signals we could hear. Okay, you got that? That's what n is. And depending upon the numbers you put in there, you can come up with 10, you can come up with 10,000, you can come up with 20 million, even 100 million. Now, the debunkers, of course, put in the low numbers in those years and came up with little tiny numbers like 10, 20 and said, hey, no way, it's a big galaxy, we'll never have any, never give me signals. Didn't stop SETI, though, from getting lots of money and build radio telescopes, right, like mushrooms. And so it was kind of a debunker's tool, but it was a soft disclosure, small d thing. At least they were acknowledging there might be something out there. And it was fun, and Frank got a lot of attention. A lot of attention. In fact, it's a legend. The Drake equation is a legend. My hat's off to Dr. Frank Drake. However, oh, by the way, do I have this here? Oh, yeah. But let me go one step further. A couple years ago, an MIT professor by the name of Dr. Sarah Seeger decides that she is going to take a different approach to this equation, bless her heart, and she comes up with another equation. Now, this equation, I'm not going to get through all the variables, but basically what this equation determines, and it's sophisticated, is how many planets are out there that would have life that we could actually detect using our science by examining their spectral output and what have you through spectrum analysis. And you put in all these numbers, which she did, and she came out with the number of planets that we could perceive life in that fashion. And it was 2. 2 planets in the galaxy. It's pretty much it. And all the rare earth, debunking people jumped up and screaming and they're waving and they're drinking champagne and they're going, see, I told you so. Right? And let's see. Let's see if I got this right. So I got something here. Hang on, let me see what I got here. I may have something. Let me see this. What's this? This is, this is the new equation on the exact odds of following life, right? And I think that is the Sager? Yeah, that's Sarah. Nice little article there that came out. There was a lot of publicity. All right. Hang on. Now, that year, not long after she published that equation and demonstrated there's really only 2 planets in the galaxy at this point that we could discover life on, she was given a MacArthur Genius Grant for $625,000. Okay. I looked at that and I said, that's a lot of money. I gotta use some of that. And so I have, and will shortly publish, this is not the main gift, this is a sub-gift. I'm going to publish an equation of my own. And I should point out that on MacArthur Genius Grants, you can't apply for them, right? They just give it to you. They have people that secretly go around looking for weird, smart people, and they find somebody cool, and then they just surprise them, with this grant, you wake up. So, what I'm trying to do is put it out there. Now, I'm a left-brained person, and so I don't have these skills, but I'm surrounded by people that are leaving their body on a regular basis. In fact, they're in body, you call them, they're out of body. You have to get voice for it. So anyway, the point is that I'm just putting it out there and saying, look, just get it out there that Steve Bassett's got something here that is at least worth a MacArthur better than average intelligence grant. 40 grand. That's good. I'll take it. All right? Because I have come up with, I think, the appropriate adjustment to the Frank Drake equation. Now this is serious now. Come on. It's not all jokes. Come to daddy. It is called the extraterrestrial equation. Now, this is not particularly complicated. E is the number of planets with sentient life that have existed in the galaxy, going back 14 billion years. It's a big galaxy. It's been here a long time. So I'm taking the whole galaxy. All right? It's not complicated. Here are the variables. S is the number of stars in the galaxy. 100 billion. Well, actually, it's not just 100 billion. That's considered the bottom low estimate because they believe there may be as many as 300 billion brown dwarfs. And the reason we can't be sure of that is because brown dwarfs are not as hot, not as bright, and can't quite see them, but they're there. Now, there's no problem with that. You see, a brown dwarf is just not as hot as our sun, which means that if a planet has to orbit a little closer, and it gets all the warmth and heat it needs, and it can have all the life it wants. But we can't see it. So I'm going to take all 300 billion of those brown dwarfs, and I'm going to put them off the side. I'm going to put them in a box, brown dwarf box. That's the fudge factor. We're going to put that over here. And I'm going to count them. Now, Frank didn't do this. I'm spotting 75% of all the suns in the galaxy here to make a point. That's what's going to go with 100 billion. The number of planets per star, going to go with 5. Now, our solar system, which is so normal, it's just, not funny. We have 9, right? 8.5. And then this Planet X will be here a couple of months from now. That's 10. Kind of 10. So anyway, the point is that we're going to go with half of that. We're going to say that the average is half. Well, let me tell you, the studies that are being done by the Kepler and the other 2 census-taking telescopes easily confirming that's a good number. So we're solid on that number. All right. Now the next one is the fraction of planets that are in the life zone. Well, we know that we had 2, and then there was that thing that blew up. That was in the life zone. We had 3. I don't think Venus is going to do it, though it's close. So we're going to go with a conservative 20%. 2 out of 5. All Right? 20% of the planets around the star are in the life zone. And guess what? The analysis is showing that too. In fact, the number of, quote, Earth-like planets is going up like this. Every couple of months, I got a new estimate. It's up another 25 million. Whatever. We're going to what, 20%? Now, the fraction of life zone planets that develop life, 50%. One of the reasons why that's a low number is because they're starting to understand panspermia. Now, that's not a pornographic statement. That simply means that life can exist in space. It can be in a dormant, hibernated form and just float around until it finds a primordial soup somewhere and drop on in, and suddenly the logic of life emerging from a nice steaming cauldron of ancient gases and stuff doesn't seem so unlikely if life is able to drift in from space. Which means that it's not what are the chances of a primordial soup on Earth developing life. What are the chances of a primordial soup anywhere in the galaxy of billions of primordial soups developing it just once? And then it starts to float away. 50%. And then the fraction of life, of those planets developing intelligence. All right? 50%. Now, I want to point out something very important here. In the Drake equation, to his credit, Drake felt, and that is kind of the consensus, frankly, of a lot of the scientists in exobiology, that the number of planets in the life zone that will develop life is 100%. Right? If you can stand life and you've got water, if you can sustain, if you have the ability to sustain life and you've got water, you're going to get life. Because life wills out. Life will find its way. That comes from, of course, the movie. What's the mark? Yeah. Very good. And Jeff Goldblum is the one that said it, the mathematician. And then Drake said that if it develops life, it gets intelligent life. Period. It's going to happen, 100%. I am spotting him 50% on both of those. Now, when you run the numbers through the extraterrestrial equation, how many civilizations have been in the galaxy in the last 14 billion years? Oh, well, that's the equation, right? They're the numbers. 25 billion. That's a little more than the initial Drake equation on who will contact us. That's how many sentient civilizations. 25 billion in the galaxy. Now that's on the low numbers. If I use the Drake and the general consensus of 100% of life-capable planets get life eventually, and 100% of life planets get intelligent life inevitably, then the actual number is 100 billion civilizations in the galaxy. So let all the debunkers, living and dead, suck on that number. Sarah Sager got the 625 grand for predicting there's 2 planets out there we can find life. I am predicting 100 billion. I want that grant. Now, that brings me to this equation. This equation is in fact going to be published. This is the real gift to the contactees. This came to me about 3 years ago, and I kept putting it off until I ran into an astronomer named Gordon Spear, who lives in Sonoma. And he said, let's do it. And so I put it together, and we worked together to work out a lot of the text and stuff. And we will soon publish it. This is the contact equation. I'm going to try to build some suspense here, right? So, go with me. N sub S equals T sub C divided by N sub Ca. Clearly this is a very complex equation. And Ca is not California, okay? And in this case, T sub C equals C times N sub Cp divided by 365 times A, so N sub Cd equals P times F times N sub C. You get it, okay? So clearly we have a complex mathematical equation here. And what are the variables? P is the population of the United States. S is the land area. Actually, this is not an equation, but it's useful for some sub-stuff. Land area of the U.S. in square miles. Small f is the fraction of U.S. population who believe they have had physical contact with extraterrestrials, which based on the surveys is on the low end 2%. That's 6 million, folks. That's the number I believe is accurate for the United States. Just 6 million contactees, give or take. Right? A is the average current age of the U.S. population, 37.2. Most of us will never see that again. So we're above average. N sub CP is the average number of physical contacts per person over a current average age of the U.S. population. That's a tricky one. I'm going with 30. I think that number's maybe a touch high, but it may be okay. 30 contacts on an average of 37 years. Now, some of you have had more, some of you had less. N sub CD is the average number of contacts in ET saucer, and that's supposed to say ship. I will fix that. We'll get to this later. Can facilitate per day, right? And that is calculated based upon a considerable amount of understanding of the experience, thanks to the nearly 1 million accounts that experiencers or contactees have written up and sent to the researchers around the world. How many of you knew that there's over 1 million written accounts that have been submitted? You didn't know that, did you? 500,000 sit in Ann Strieber's files right now. Been there for some time. She read every one of them. The other 500,000 are scattered amongst the other researchers. One of the most important research projects that needs to be done, and it's going to take a ton of money, is for a team to go and analyze all 1 million of them and database them all and categorize them all and create a full bell curve of all the evidentiary material that's consistent. Unfortunately, they don't have that money at the moment, but one day it'll happen. So, C equals P times F, which equals the Americans currently having physical contact with ET, 6.34 million. T sub C equals C times N sub CP, total contact events over the current average age of the U.S. population, 190 million. It means 190 million contact events over the last 37.2 years. Are you with me now, folks? You hanging in there? Even those that skipped that math course in college, right? Kind of passed on that? It's okay. It's all right. N sub CA equals 365 times A times N sub CD. The number of contact events one ET ship facilitates over the average age of the U.S. population, 67,890. They don't take vacation. They work all the time. N sub S. N sub S is in fact the answer to this equation, and it is the number of ships needed to conduct all contact events over the current average population of the U.S. That is the contact equation. And the answer, based upon the numbers that I just showed you, is 2,802. However, those numbers are a little conservative. Using slightly more aggressive numbers, which really just doubles the number of events they can facilitate, because I have a little more aggressive view than Dr. Spear, about the ability of the craft. It comes in at half that, 1,401. What does that mean? Don't think population density, just think geography, all right? We got 50 states. How many ships per state to handle the contactees in a state to generate the numbers that we believe exist? 28. Why is this equation important? It's simple. It shows that there is more than enough ships, probably, existing in our near atmosphere, operating from underground facilities to easily handle the contact level that is being shown by the surveys that are being done. 6 million people. It takes 28 ships per state. So if there's 28 ships that are working, where are we now? Maine. My first time here, by the way. My brother-in-law's family is from Maine, right? He calls it Canada Light. And I finally got here. He tells me the people here are sane. And since I've spent most of my time in Washington and Los Angeles, I can assure you this is a new experience for me. 28 ships working the whole state of Maine, folks, night after night, 24/7, not 24/7, they work at night mostly. 365 days a year is enough to do it. Got another 28 work in Montana, another 28 work in New York. What is the point here? The point is, we're going to publish this equation, we're going to make a big deal out of it, because it fundamentally makes possible the reality of contact as demonstrated by the evidence and the surveys. It is designed to support the contactees in a mathematical way. So that somebody looks at that and goes, yeah, that could be done. It would also explain all those sightings we're having, right? People take the night vision binoculars, they go out there, particularly in the west, near a base, and they're looking up there. There's a fleet. There's about 90 there, yeah, there they go. And they're moving south. Oh, there's 75 coming in from the left there. What do you think they're doing up there? Right? You think they think this is like an air show they put on every night? You know, the people come out and we give them a show and then we go back to, you know, Zeta something or another. No, they're working, folks. It's like watching the freeway. Well, you don't have a freeway here. You know, you're very fortunate. It's like watching the freeway in Los Angeles. Amazingly enough, every 7 a.m., you look out and there's thousands of cars moving in giant ant streams up and down these long, huge, you know, asphalt corridors. They're going to work. They're working. They're taking care of 6 million contactees. Now, if they're doing this around the world, they're dealing with 140 million human beings. Now, that's one hell of a science project, folks. And if I were the government, which I'm not, I kind of want to know more about that. I'd want to sort of get my arms around that and come up with a plan to address it, discuss it, study it, and get everybody involved. It's kind of a big deal, right? The government has chosen another course, right? It denies the existence of extraterrestrials completely, denies the experience of all the contactees in the world. It stands on the edge of the galaxy and says, there's nothing there to see, and expects you to pay your taxes on time. Okay? That pays their salaries. The emperor has no clothes. The emperor is completely naked. In fact, all of the emperors are naked, and their staff, and their support people. They're all naked, and yet they're just strutting around Washington and Paris, and London, and all the capitals of the world going, I'm so finely dressed, I feel so good today. It's got to stop. So that is the contact equation. It's going to be published in about 2 months. Look for it and think MacArthur. Now, let's talk contact. First of all, you got to laugh. First thing you need to know about this is I don't run a contact group. But if I did, I would say, look, I don't know what's going on with you. I don't know how many hybrid children you got. I got one message for you. You got to start laughing, folks. Laugh, 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 laugh now. Because you see, that is one of the most powerful things the human race has got going for us. Everybody wants to know why the ETs are here. They're here for our gold. You know, whatever. They're here for something. Well, they are here for some stuff. I do believe that. But and they say, and we're special. You keep hearing people talking about how human beings have some incredibly special thing about them that's unique in all the galaxy, which is why they're here. I appreciate that. It's cool. It's all right. I don't think we're that special. However, I do know this. There are almost no accounts that I'm aware of. I have a lot of people here that could correct me on this, of an extraterrestrial telling a contactee a joke, or even smiling, that I'm aware of. Now, some of these space brother types, back then, and that was kind of a wild and crazy period, but even then, if you look at the pictures of the space brothers, the stranger, the Pentagon, they're not smiling. They may not have a sense of humor. That may be the issue. After enough time, you lose your sense of humor, right? But they live thousands of years, very likely. And I'm pretty sure that after you've lived about 600 years, your sense of humor is gone. Because there ain't nothing that you can be surprised about anymore. There's no jokes that you haven't heard. And so you got no sense of humor. And so they come here, because we still do. and they probe us and they do all kinds of stuff, you know, and we're supposed to tell a joke, and if we don't tell a joke, they come back and get us again. So I've been keeping track of like things like this regarding contact because I think it's important. This is kind of cool. I like this one. What I love the most about this cartoon is that everybody is just it's just basic. It's just, you know, I'm here, got a little aggression. Gonna check out what's going on. The ET, of course, is there because he's forgotten about some pickup he did years ago, and he's trying to get regressed back to it because he can't find that person again, and he can't remember what they look like. So he's there. That's good. Yvonne Smith is probably gonna be handling that. And this is good. This is funny. This is a political abduction joke. By the way, the governor. This is interesting. Now, I don't necessarily believe in karma because I only have a left brain. But the governor that was pushing the vaginal probe concept as necessary in order to have, how would you say, any kind of abortion laws. He and his wife were just convicted of 11 counts of fraud and are facing 20 to 40 years in prison. Governor McConnell, ex-Governor McConnell. What can I say? What can I say? This is fun. I like this one. This is... I dare somebody to go to their Facebook and work it out so they can put a status thing in there somehow. I don't know, right? In the about me, because I think you have options. The about me thing, and just, you know, abducted in town, whatever. Just I'm in, I'm out, whatever. Just let them know. Right? In ship, out of ship, whatever you gotta do. And this is my favorite, folks. And I haven't found one to top this one yet. Now, you gotta grok this in one giant, you know. The artistic achievement here is the look on that skunk's face. I mean, that is classic. You don't want to fool anybody that look like that. All right, now enough of this nonsense. Let's get down to business here, folks. This is serious. I'm going to take you to the lows and the highs, up and down, because if I don't, you're going back to sleep. You know it, I know it. One of the things you need to understand is that when I look at this issue, I'm looking at it exopolitically, which is just a license to think big picture, right? But implications. I'm not a contactee. They don't want me. I don't have sightings. I don't research it. I'm an activist. I'm dealing with the politics of it. And so I'm interested in the implications. I'm interested in the information and so forth. Years ago, I put a quote on my website, which is my best shot at Bartlett's. Right? I say this and I put it on tape because that's how you get in Bartlett's. You gotta, unless you write a book, you've got to support it, or somebody will steal it from you. This is a quote, and it goes like this: and that the intellectual passion occurs at the intersection of fact and implication. Think about that for a second. It's pretty cool, huh? I like that. What do I mean? There are a lot of facts out there. A lot of facts. You know, how many raisins in a box of raisin bran? That's a fact. Implications, not much. And so you live your life facts. And then one day you get some facts that they intersect with the implication line, right? At an important point. And suddenly you are in something very heavy. And that's where intellectual passion comes from. And that's what I have for this issue. It's not emotional. It's not from being a contactee. It's about intellectual passion. And it's the facts that are powerful here for me. So what are some of the facts? Well, we could spend days on that, but I'm going to focus on a couple of things with respect to contactees. One of the most important is message. As you know, it is common for contactees to receive or be given little, well, cable television shows. They get a little table work, maybe go visit a former, hybrid child or whatever, maybe let them fly the ship for a couple of minutes, and they take them in, sit them down, give them a little show. I don't know how long it lasts. I'm going to guess a few minutes. They can put it in their head, they can put it on the wall, whatever. I'm sure when they put it on the wall, it's like ultra high def, because these are aliens, after all, they're pretty smart. And what are these messages? Well, I mean, if they were all over the place, we wouldn't care, but it turns out they're consistent, which is really significant, all right? The messages are about, well, things like this, all right? As near as I can tell, they're fighting over which religion is the most peaceful. Now, that's not happening, right? We know that's an overstatement, really. I mean, come on. There's no religious wars going on out there. And then something like this, right? I like this. See, they mostly spoke in monosyllable grunts, syllable grunts. In fact, the last words from their civilization before the meteor hit were oomph and what the And so, what's the message there? Simple message. Recently, we had a 60-foot, meter-wide meteor pass within 25,000 miles. Not too long ago, we had one about 3 times bigger than that. And it passed within 100,000 miles, whatever. Okay. Well, if one about the size of, I don't know, Mount Everest were to come by and hit us, it's the end of everything. All right? I mean, everything. Right? So theoretically, that would be something to avoid. So theoretically, you would want to put some resources there. That can't happen, right? You don't roll the dice on that one if you can. So you'd be doing massive efforts to build extensive detection systems to pick them up early, and you'd be developing any means whatsoever to intercept and divert a Mount Everest meteor. I mean, you do that, not just make a movie about it, right? They made the movie Armageddon, they made the movie Deep Impact, and they thought, okay, that's it, we're done, that's good. What more do we need to do? No, you need to do that. How much money have we spent on that in the last, say, 50 years? $1 million, maybe $1.5 million. We spend that in Afghanistan every 26 minutes, right? So here's something that destroys everything we ever have or ever will be, and we haven't got much for it. But you need $1 trillion to go blow people up in the Middle East, no problem. Where do you want us to send the check? That's a message. Now we got this one. This is, the environmental destruction. Now they don't show them this cartoon. They actually show them the environmental destruction, right? They play it out for them right there, right? End of the seas, whatever, forest all gone. Interesting message. And then this is another political one, right? The alien, I'm not crazy about. Obviously, they took it from Fifth Element. I get it. Polar ice caps are melting. So, what's the message here? We're debating endlessly the issue of whether humans are affecting the climate or not affecting the climate. Who gives a damn? If the sea's right 20 feet, it doesn't matter whether the sun did it or humans did it. You're drowning, right? You're underwater. So what are we really doing besides endlessly debating it and beating each other over the head to really address the issue? Basically nothing. Even the things we are doing are pointless. Right? Little message there. They get that message. And then, of course, this message. From the appropriately named non sequitur. A great cartoon. You can't read it anymore because they're now about that big in the paper, but you can get them on the net. Can anybody read that? You okay? The Higgs boson provides unlimited renewable energy. But the oil companies won't allow it. So you talking monkeys will go to your usual scientific discovery default mode. And what is that? Think about it. Oh yeah. How's that new bomb coming along? Trying to keep it from making the universe implode, sir. That would be a bad thing. Good guess. Am I exaggerating? No, I'm not. In around 1999, an article appeared in the Washington Post about the Air Force's research into antimatter weapons. I noted that article with interest. So did Mr. Brown, the author of the book Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons. Now, those of you that saw the movie Angels and Demons, how many saw Angels and Demons? Decent number of you. What was key to that movie? An antimatter